My name is Josephine Dubois. I'm 32, a real estate agent living and working in the heart of Lyon, France. For the past 8 years, I've fought tooth and nail in an industry that rewards charm but demands grit. Every late night, every deal chased to the edge of burnout, it all led to this, a small stone cottage just outside the city. Not flashy, but perfect. Cobblestone streets, lavender blooming at the gate, ivy climbing the old stone walls like time had softened everything. The wooden floors creaked, but to me they whispered, "You did it." It was mine. All of it earned, not given. My parents, Claire and Henri, admired my independence. They said so often. But Étienne, my younger brother, had always floated on their generosity like it was owed to him. Then last Sunday, at our usual family dinner, he casually announced he was moving into my house. He had no idea what was coming. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories, they're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. We grew up in a modest house just outside Lyon, nothing extravagant but always warm. Our parents worked hard for that warmth. Papa, ever precise and dependable, spent long hours at his accounting firm, while Maman poured her heart into the classroom, teaching young children their first words, numbers, and songs. Discipline and structure were unspoken rules in our home, at least for me. As the eldest, I learned early that rewards came with effort. If I wanted something, I earned it through spotless chores, top grades, or sheer persistence. I still remember saving pocket money for weeks just to buy a paperback or a new scarf. But Étienne? He only had to pout in the toy aisle. One dramatic sigh, one teary-eyed performance, and he'd leave the store clutching the latest action figure or remote control car. Maman would gently smile and say he was sensitive, that he needed more attention, more softness. That label became a free pass he carried all the way into adulthood. The summer before university, I barely slept. I juggled trays at a crowded cafe by day and tutored English in the evenings. My fingers were raw from handling change and chalk, but I was determined. I wanted to buy my textbooks with my own money. Étienne, meanwhile, spent that summer stretched out by the Rhône, basking in the sun with his friends, no responsibilities, no deadlines. Just laughter, river swims, and leisurely afternoons. When the time came to move into my tiny dorm at Université de Lyon, my parents helped where they could. But the truth is, I lived on student loans and part-time shifts. I learned to make pasta 3 ways and how to budget down to the last euro. I counted coins before buying coffee. 2 years later, Étienne arrived on campus like it was a vacation. My parents had covered everything: tuition, books, housing. He treated university like a social experiment, skipping lectures, throwing parties, failing exams. By his 3rd semester, he was out. No diploma, no apology. But there was always a safety net. They paid for a local trade program next. That lasted a few months, just long enough for him to grow bored and quit. And somehow, even after all that, he still felt entitled to my home. That pattern, me striving, Étienne drifting, became the unspoken rhythm of our lives. Through earning my business degree, I threw myself into Lyon's fiercely competitive real estate market. It was a world where charm, timing, and ruthlessness often mattered more than experience. I started at the bottom, answering phones at a small agency, learning contracts by heart, shadowing senior agents, and offering to handle the listings no one else wanted. Slowly, deal by deal, I climbed. When I finally earned my license, I treated every commission like it mattered, because it did. Half went to cover my modest rent and daily living, the other half I stashed away religiously. Every euro was a brick in the foundation of my future. Étienne, meanwhile, floated from one job to the next. Bartender, retail assistant, delivery driver, he tried them all. None lasted. He was always either fired or forced to quit. The reasons varied. His manager was power-hungry, the job was beneath him, or someone else messed things up and he took the fall. I stopped keeping track of the excuses. What remained consistent was the safety net, our parents. They always stepped in, paid his back rent, co-signed for his sleek new Peugeot when the last one finally broke down, and twice, yes, twice, settled his credit card debt after he maxed it out on designer clothes and weekend getaways. They called it compassion, called it enabling. But saying so made me sound bitter, so I stayed silent. 29, I reached a milestone I'd been working toward for nearly a decade. I had finally saved enough for a down payment. The Lyon housing market was brutal. Homes were snapped up within hours. But I had insider knowledge, connections, and timing on my side. When I saw the cottage, tucked away at the edge of the city, the stone glowing amber in the late afternoon sun, I felt it instantly. The carved beams, the crooked attic window that offered a sliver of city skyline, the roses spilling over the garden fence, it felt like it had been waiting for me. Price was steep, strained every corner of my budget. But I did the math more than once. The mortgage process was grueling. Banks scrutinized me not just as a buyer, but as a single woman, as if that made me less stable. I came armed with documents, projections, proof of income. I fought for every signature. The day I held those keys in my hand, I drove straight there and sat on the cottage steps for an hour, just letting it sink in. I cried. Not because I was sad, but because I had done it. Alone. Cottage became my retreat from the world. On weekends, I painted the walls in soft cream and pale blue. I planted rosemary and lavender in terracotta pots outside the kitchen window. I hunted through antique markets for the right chairs, lamps, mirrors, nothing fancy, but everything chosen with care. Piece by piece, it became my sanctuary. Place that reflected me not just in style, but in spirit. My parents came to the housewarming. Papa grilled sausages in the garden like it was a national holiday, while Mammon rearranged my mismatched chairs with a smile. They gave me a gift card to a local hardware shop, a small gesture, but one that touched me more than they knew. For once, I felt like they saw me, not as the responsible sibling or the one who always has it together, but simply as their daughter who'd built something real. Étienne showed up late, as usual. No gift, of course. He breezed in, flopped onto my new sofa, and launched into a dramatic retelling of his latest breakup. Barely glanced at the space around him. Then, halfway through the evening, he looked around and asked if he could throw a party here, said his flat was too cramped, that this place had good energy. I declined, gently but firmly. What followed was a week of snide, passive-aggressive texts. He accused me of being cold and uppity ever since I bought the house. Said I thought I was better than the rest of the family now. But the truth? I didn't think I was better. I just finally had something of my own and I wasn't giving it away. For 2 years I held on. Despite the mounting bills, the stress, the constant small repairs that turned into major ones, I made it work. The mortgage was high, higher than I should have taken on, but I adjusted. I cut corners, skipped holidays, shopped secondhand, made peace with an empty fridge at the end of each month. The house was old and temperamental, with a leaky roof that groaned in the rain and wiring that blinked like it had moods of its own. But it was mine. That knowledge carried me through the toughest days. Meanwhile, Étienne remained Étienne. He bounced between girlfriends and short-lived jobs, never staying long enough to build anything real. He moved in with a woman named Camille for a while, posted filtered selfies of their perfect life, until they crashed and burned over something involving her missing jewelry and his friend borrowing it. Back to his flat he went. He quit his job at a digital agency because, as he told us over roast chicken one Sunday, his boss didn't vibe with his creativity. The week after that, he asked our parents for €500 to fix his car. Turned out he'd used it to rent a convertible and spend a weekend in Nice. Every family dinner came with a new crisis. A friend who betrayed him, a boss who misunderstood him, a girlfriend who didn't get him. Our parents, especially Maman, met each story with hand-wringing and soft sighs. There were no ultimatums, no real consequences. Just concern. Always concern. I stopped arguing. I learned to nod politely and leave early. Then, last month, it all collapsed again. Étienne was fired from his job at a sporting goods store. Inventory issues, he claimed. He swore his coworkers had framed him, that they'd been skimming product and pinned it on him because he was new and too honest. I didn't even ask for details. His landlord refused to renew the lease. There'd been too many noise complaints, too many late rent payments. And just like that, at 30 years old, my brother was out of work and facing eviction. Call came from Maman, of course. Her voice trembled with anxiety and something else, guilt, maybe. "It's not fair," she whispered, "what the world does to sensitive boys. He just needs a little support, Joe. He's trying, really. He's just different." Then came the part that made me pause. Families stick together in hard times, don't they? I brushed it off. She said things like that all the time. Sentimental phrases sewn into every conversation. But I should have paid attention. I had my own crisis unfolding. The leak under the kitchen sink had started as a trickle. Then came the mold. When the plumber opened the wall, what he found was worse, rot years in the making. The repair estimate, €8,000, hit me like a punch. It wasn't just one pipe. It was half the kitchen. And I didn't have it. Just a few months before, I'd emptied my emergency fund to replace the boiler after it gave out midwinter. Before that, it was the wiring. The house was beautiful, yes, but it was also old, stubborn, and demanding, like a living thing that never stopped asking for more. I'd kept up as long as I could. But now, I was scraping bottom. I'd sworn I'd never go into credit card debt, not after watching Étienne sink beneath it more than once. Yet here I was, eyeing my statements, doing mental gymnastics to justify the impossible. In a moment of clarity or maybe desperation, I called Elise, my financial advisor. She'd been with me since my receptionist days, had warned me years ago that this cottage might stretch me too far. At the time, I'd ignored her. I wanted the house. I believed I could handle it. Now, she didn't sugarcoat anything. "You're drowning, Josephine," she said, her tone firm but not unkind. "You have no savings, no cushion. The market is hot. If you sell now, you can pay off your debts and buy something manageable. It's not defeat. It's survival." I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, heart pounding. For years, this house had been my proof that hard work meant something. Selling it felt like surrender. But what Elise said made a painful kind of sense. And deep down, I knew I wasn't the only one circling this house like it was free for the taking. Selling the cottage felt like giving up a piece of my soul. It wasn't just a house, it was the physical proof of every sacrifice I'd made, every night I stayed late at the office, every euro I tucked away while others spent freely. Letting it go felt like betrayal. But Elise had been right. The numbers didn't lie. I was house poor, exhausted, anxious, barely staying afloat. The dream I had built was suffocating me. Reluctantly, I reached out to Margot, a colleague known for her cool efficiency and success in residential sales. She came by that same afternoon, walked the property with her phone in one hand, already picturing the listing photos. When we reached the garden, she paused, scanned the view, and said, "You could list this for €50,000 more than you paid." I blinked. I know a couple, dual income, no kids. They lost a bidding war last week down the road. They're pre-approved and eager. Want me to call them? They came the next day while I was at work. Margot texted me updates in real time. By 5 p.m., they'd made an offer, 7% above asking, no contingencies, just one condition, a 30-day close with the option for me to rent back for another month at a reduced rate. It was generous. too generous to refuse. Till signing the papers made my chest tighten. This place had seen me through my hardest and proudest years. It had been mine when nothing else felt steady. But logic won. I signed. The inspection came and went with only minor repairs. And just like that, the sale closed on a gray Thursday afternoon. I didn't tell anyone. This was my decision, and I didn't owe anyone an explanation, least of all my family. I needed time to grieve it privately, without their reactions or unsolicited advice. That Sunday, I walked into our weekly dinner carrying a truth that still hadn't fully settled in my chest. My cottage was no longer mine. Dinner at my parents' townhouse had always been a ritual of sorts. The food, the routine, the familiar bickering over dessert, it was the closest thing we had to tradition. Maman's cocoa vin simmered on the stove, filling the house with the comforting scent of red wine, thyme, and garlic. Papa was already in the living room, swirling a glass of Bordeaux like a man hosting royalty. But something was different. The dining table had been set with the fine porcelain, the wedding set, only used for Christmas or anniversaries. In the center sat a silver bucket, beads of condensation trailing down its polished surface, cradling a bottle of champagne. Not sparkling wine, actual champagne. Papa greeted me at the door with unusual warmth. "There's our dependable Josephine," he said, squeezing my shoulder too hard. Maman swooped in next, brushing my hair back from my face, clicking her tongue at the dark circles under my eyes. "You work too much," she chided gently. "You need to take better care of yourself." I gave her a tight smile and murmured something non-committal. They were hiding something. The room was too cheerful, too rehearsed. The champagne, porcelain, the way they kept glancing at each other, then at the clock. Something was coming, and I had a sinking feeling I wasn't going to like it. "No, Étienne," I said softly but firmly. "It's not a prank. It's a done deal." The room remained still, save for the faint tick of the antique wall clock. Maman's lips parted in disbelief, eyes darting from the papers to my face, then to Papa's for confirmation. But Papa was already scanning the documents, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted his glasses. Étienne lowered his glass slowly, setting it down without the celebratory clink he had imagined. You sold it?" Maman finally whispered, as though saying it too loudly would make it more real. "Without telling us?" "Yes," I replied, steady. "Because it was mine. And because every time I tried to share a decision with you, you twisted it into something that served someone else." "But this was supposed to be your home," Papa said, his voice tight. "Your sanctuary." "No, Papa," I said. "It was your plan to keep me close, useful, available. A convenient fallback when Étienne needed help, when you needed me at the store, when Maman wanted to host lunches with her friends in the garden I maintained. But you never asked what I wanted. You assumed I'd wait, that I'd comply." Étienne scoffed. "So what, you're just going to let strangers live there? Throw away your roots over some wounded pride?" My gaze met his, calm, unflinching. "No. I'm reclaiming my life. I'm moving to Lyon next month. I signed a lease on a studio near the university. I've accepted a job with a women's housing initiative. Something I care about. Something that isn't about you." The words hit harder than any raised voice could. Maman sat down, slowly, as though her legs could no longer hold her. Papa folded the documents, set them aside, and looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in what felt like years. Not as a daughter to manage, not as a role to assign. Just me. Étienne broke the silence with a bitter laugh. "Wow. So you're the hero now? You're going to run off and save the world?" "No," I said. "I'm just done being the backup plan. I'm done letting guilt and tradition chain me to people who only remember I exist when they need something." Memin reached out, but I gently pulled away. I love you. Both of you. But love without respect is just manipulation in a prettier dress. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, I stood. I didn't come here to start a fight. I came because I wanted to be honest, to finally speak without fear. And now I have. As I reached the door, I paused and turned. Étienne was staring blankly at the table. Memin blinked back tears. Papa still held the documents, but he wasn't reading them anymore. Just holding. I hope you find a way to live with the truth, I said. I already have. Then I stepped out into the night, the cool air washing over me like absolution. The first night in my new flat, I sat on the window ledge with a glass of wine, watching the river shimmer beneath the street lamps. The silence was profound, not the tense kind I'd known growing up, but a gentle, expansive quiet that felt like breathing room. No one's footsteps overhead. No slammed doors. No guilt pressing into my spine like a constant weight. Just me and the sound of the city exhaling. For the first time in years, I felt like I owned my life. But peace didn't come without a cost. Memin stopped calling. Her silence was cold and strategic, a tactic I knew well. Papa called once, asking gently if I'd reconsider, just for Étienne's sake. When I said no, he sighed, thanked me for my honesty, and we didn't speak again for 2 weeks. I missed them, but not the drama. Not the constant walking on eggshells. Work became my refuge. I dove into architectural design projects with a sharp clarity I hadn't felt in months. My colleagues noticed the shift. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it, one said. I smiled, not explaining that what I'd done was finally draw a line. Then came the letter. Not a text, not an email, a handwritten letter from Étienne delivered to my office. My stomach tightened as I recognized his angular handwriting, the kind that always looked like it was racing to finish. I opened it slowly. It wasn't an apology. I hadn't expected one. But it wasn't pure venom either. Joe, you've made your point. You're the responsible one. You win. I'm crashing at a friend's place for now. Don't worry about me, I know you won't. Just don't pretend you did this because you had to. You did it because you could. Enjoy your river view. Étienne. I folded the letter and stared at it, heart heavy. He still didn't understand. Or maybe he did, and that was the part that hurt most. I hadn't sold the cottage to hurt him. I'd sold it because I'd been drowning quietly for years, holding it together while they gave him life rafts. I didn't reply. Instead, I poured my energy into building a future that wasn't weighed down by guilt and old expectations. I took weekend walks by the river, read late into the night without interruption, and hosted friends for dinner in a space that finally felt mine. 3 months after the sale, Memin showed up. No warning. No call. Just a knock on my door one Saturday afternoon. She looked smaller than I remembered, her coat too big, her eyes tired. I was nearby, she said, as if that explained it. I let her in. We sat by the window. She commented on the light, on how quiet the flat was. Then she said, "You've changed." I nodded. I had to. She blinked, then reached into her bag. Pulled out an envelope. For you. From your grandmother's estate. I should have given it to you earlier. Inside was a letter from my grandmother, Memin's mother, written years ago before she passed. She'd left a small inheritance in my name. For the one who learned to stand alone, it read. Memin watched me read, then whispered, "I'm sorry we made you feel like you had to. We didn't talk about Étienne. We didn't need to. That visit didn't fix everything. But it cracked something open. And I realized healing doesn't always come in apologies. Sometimes it comes in showing up. In silence. In a glance that says I see you now. My life didn't become perfect. Family dinners remained complicated. Étienne still blamed me, but I stopped shrinking myself to make space for his chaos. The river outside my window kept flowing, steady and free, and so did I. One evening, Étienne showed up unannounced, sitting on my cottage steps like a sulky teenager. His half-hearted apology, "Sorry for dinner, I guess," was overshadowed by his plea for a loan to cover rent. I refused, tired of his cycle of dependency. "You've had years to save, Étienne. This is on you." He left in a huff, accusing me of abandoning him to homelessness. To my surprise, my parents stepped up, letting Étienne stay in their guest room with strict rules: rent, chores, a curfew. He resisted, but they held firm. A month later, Papa called with news. Étienne had landed a marketing job after preparing diligently with their help. At our next family dinner, the tension was palpable but easing. Étienne, in a suit, announced his job with a humility I'd never seen. Maman apologized, admitting they'd expected too much of me and too little of him. Étienne even thanked me months later for forcing him to face reality. 6 months have passed, and life feels quieter now, not in the sense of loneliness, but in the way clarity quiets chaos. I've exchanged the cottage, once my proudest possession, for a modest townhouse. It doesn't have ivy-covered walls or creaky floors with character, but it's clean, sunlit, and fully mine. I no longer feel like I'm fighting to keep something just to prove a point. Letting go of that dream turned out to be the most adult decision I've ever made. And Étienne? He's renting a small flat near Croix-Rousse, working full-time in a marketing agency, paying his bills, waking up with an alarm clock instead of waiting for life to fix itself. We don't talk every day, but when we do, the conversations feel less tense, less like two people stuck in a family pattern and more like two adults learning how to be siblings again. At our most recent family dinner, Papa carved the roast while Étienne updated us about his work project. Maman passed me the potatoes and asked how the townhouse renovations were going. No raised voices. No passive-aggressive remarks. Just a table, a family, and the kind of fragile peace that only grows when people are finally willing to change. Looking back, it wasn't just about the cottage. It was about everything that cottage represented: control, approval, validation, sacrifice. I had been trying to prove something for years, not just to my parents or to Étienne, but to myself. That I was good enough, responsible enough, successful enough. But you know what I learned? Lesson 1. You are not responsible for saving anyone who refuses to help themselves. It's compassionate to care, but damaging to carry someone else's adulthood on your back. Especially when that person is perfectly capable of walking if they just stand up. Lesson 2. Family love does not excuse family imbalance. Being the strong one doesn't mean becoming the invisible one. Boundaries are not betrayals. They are the fences that keep gardens from becoming overgrown. Lesson 3. Letting go of a dream isn't failure, it's redirection. Cottage was beautiful, but it became a symbol of resentment and exhaustion. Sometimes the things we chase the hardest end up costing us the most peace. Letting it go gave me back my breath. I didn't share this story to make anyone the villain. Étienne was spoiled, yes, but he wasn't evil. My parents were blind, but not cruel. I wasn't a victim, I was just exhausted. We were all stuck in roles we didn't know how to leave until one of us said, "Enough." And if you're watching this thinking of your own family, maybe you're the one carrying too much. Or maybe you're the one still expecting others to carry you. Either way, it's never too late to change. You don't owe anyone a version of yourself that's constantly shrinking to keep the peace. So here I am, Josephine Dubois. No longer the girl with the perfect cottage, but a woman with her own keys, her own rules, and a peace I didn't know I was allowed to have. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been the responsible one, or the one learning the hard way, like share or subscribe to this channel. Maybe someone in your life needs to hear that setting boundaries isn't cruel, it's courageous. Thanks for listening. And wherever you are in your story, I hope you find your version of freedom too.